For the average listener who's hiring one or two or three people to support your sales and marketing efforts, you most likely don't need to do anything else other than use these available tools: Upwork, AnyHire, Payoneer, Veeam. You can use these tools because you're paying a support team. Welcome to Outsource to Profits. I'm here with Nazmul, and it is 5 o'clock, I believe, in Bangladesh.
Yes,
So
it
you can
is.
see the team behind him. And today we wanted to get tactical for you founders, as it's the end of a month, the beginning of a next month. And what does that mean? That means we need to actually ensure that our teammates are paid. So Nazmul, you had a question or a series of questions around this that customers have been asking. And why don't we dive into it?
Absolutely. I think it's an important topic for us to cover. Little technical, but it's very important. So, how do we make sure that people that are the clients or people from Canada or US, those who want to work with us or want to outsource, how do they send the payments? Obviously there are many and there are different ways they can do it, but let's talk about your experiences with a few different ways you have done it, and let's talk about things that you liked, things that you did not like, and then maybe we can discuss the pros and cons of each of these methods.
Sure. And I'll begin with the beginning of my journey was 6, 7 years ago, my first time offshoring. I, like many people, went on Upwork, right? So at the time, that used to be called Olark or something like that, or Odesk, or they had a name for it before.
Yeah, right. Odesk, yeah.
Yeah. And the way that the tool works is a candidate puts themselves out in the world. It's like a LinkedIn for fractional work, essentially. So a person puts themselves on Upwork, and when they put themselves on Upwork, Upwork acts as not only a marketing engine like it does on LinkedIn, but a payment processor and tax remittance. And so when you pay somebody $1,000 as an example for a project, the recipient, the talent, does not receive $1,000. They receive $1,000 minus the tax implications of their particular region. For a lot of regions, that's somewhere of 20 to 30%. So that's where I began the journey. The problem with Upwork is it's not very scalable. Imagine, if I look at my company, Sales for Life and Pipeline Signals at one point had 30 some people: Philippines, India, Bangladesh. So I want you to imagine the fees associated with using a platform like this, and to the fact that Upwork wasn't designed for you to be acquiring full-time employees at mass. It was meant for project-based work. Like, I need a spreadsheet built here, and I need a PowerPoint presentation built here. So we began recruiting talent. When we began recruiting talent 5+ years ago, we were using recruiting firms, and then we came to our first month's pay. And oh, did it start a cascading waterfall of mistakes. You can't just, as an example, do a normal bank transaction like you are used to doing at home. So you then have to start looking at optionality. Well, our PayPal accounts were always a mess. We'd try to register a PayPal account, and we would, something would happen with PayPal, and so we've never ever had PayPal, and any of my businesses work very well. So we started looking at payment processing tools. Now, the first tool that we ended up looking at, and maybe we can even pause before I go tactical in the tools, but a kind of like situation problem resolution. Situation is, you can't pay teammates the way you're used to paying. Like here in North America, we might use ADP or Ceridian or Paychex as like the normal payment processors. That doesn't work like this in other parts of the world. So you're going to need to partner with a third-party tool to process payments.
Yeah, no, I think let's go tactical because that's where the actual value is. People want to know So what else did we try? Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
So first tool that we tried is and used successfully. So we love Veeam, Veem. And Veeam, the way that it works is they take a fixed fee of $18.99, unlimited usage. It takes 3 to 5 days to pay people. It takes your first transaction will take you about 2 weeks, because whenever you make payment transactions, the biggest reason these tools exist, but also guard against, is A, fraud, and B, poor use of funds that are illegal, right? So long and the short is it'll take about 2 weeks to process your first payment, and then afterwards it will be 3 to 5 days. They don't do the tax remittance. The tax remittance is on the responsibility of the candidate or the talent to pay in their local area. So Veeam, love it. Problem, doesn't work very well in every part of the world. So we also partner with Payoneer. Payoneer is our secondary tool. It takes a percentage of the transaction. So as you can imagine, that's a little more expensive as you scale your organization. It takes 2% of the transaction. Payments are done in 24 hours. First payment, of course, upwards of 2 weeks. But this tool works fantastic in Bangladesh. Now, one of the things that we came to learn is it's also important for the recipient to have a strong banking relationship and credit. So, as an example, Nazmul and his company banks at Citibank. I think it's called Citibank in Dhaka.
Right? Yes, you're right.
Very large bank, has a Swift code. Very easy to work with Nazmul in payments through Payoneer. But sometimes you might recruit talent that A, they have bad credit, B, they don't use their internal banking system that often, C, they use a small regional bank. Unlike in my country, in Canada, we have an oligopoly of really only 5 banks. But every one of those banks is a global powerhouse. Whereas in a lot of countries in the world, like the United States, you have a lot of small regional banks. Where in Bangladesh, as an example, there are thousands of regional banks, and some of them do not have that same sort of simple transactions and Swift codes and all those sort of details. So long and the short is that's where you might, on a one-off situation, run into a challenge, even with Payoneer, because the best practice that we've identified is when the talent sends an invoice to me, the the employer, and I pay it, and I can pay that invoice via credit card. As a backup, there's a couple backups that we've created, and it is important that you have multiple tools, because every quarter or every 6 months these tools want to do kind of a spot check, and they'll pause and they'll ask you to resend documentation, because again, they're making sure there's no money laundering, theft, any of these sort of
Yeah,
details.
yeah.
So we ask every teammate to maintain a strong Upwork account, and Upwork has a process called Any Hire. It's a service within Upwork. Now, it is prohibitively expensive, but it is great for that. Oh my God, our tool's on pause right now. We need to pay the teammate in the next week. How do we do it? Go to upwork.com/anyhire. It takes a percentage of the transaction, but 20% of the transaction, because they are taking the tax remittance. But the processing will be 24 hours. It's full service, gets everything done. This is great in a pinch, but this isn't what I would do at scale. And there's another tool similar to this called Deal that we like. They have all kinds of competitors. There's Oyster and Omnipresent. We chose Deal. Same sort of thing. It's a fixed fee, $50 a transaction. Takes 2 to 3 days for the transaction to go through. Full service, but they also, again, take tax. Now, I think this is an important conversation. Nazmul, maybe explain to the audience how pro offshoring Bangladesh is, and how they've even incentivized the talent in Bangladesh to repatriate funds from Canada and the United States and serve the North American market from a tax perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you covered most of the stuff. Just a few, there are a few things that I would like you covered. One is there are really good things about companies like Payoneer, but I'll give you one tiny number. So let me put it this way: I I have I have spent more than $1,000. I don't want to give the exact amount. I have spent more than $1,000 just as Payoneer fee this year alone, and the year has not ended yet. That's $1,000. That's a lot of money. With $1,000, there are multiple things
That's
that
a
I can think
one
about.
month salary. Just to put it in context,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a
yeah,
one
right.
month salary for a Meta Instagram paid media expert.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah, and it's not just that. So that's one thing. The other thing is in Bangladesh, government is giving us incentives if we can bring in a foreign remittance like US dollars or Canadian dollars. When we do that, government they want to pay us a certain amount. It can be 2%, it can be 3%, it can go up to 10%. But we can get that amount if we get the money from Canadian bank or US bank or any other bank to our bank. So if we bring the money via any other platform, we don't get that incentive. On top of that, we have to pay taxes. So long and the short is perfectly fine, and I think you should be using platforms like Payoneer or Deal because they're so easy and intuitive. So they're easy to operate, but for long term, I think the recipient will appreciate it a lot more if they get paid directly to the bank. So for anybody who just wants to hire somebody on project base, yeah, just please go with the Payoneer or Deal or any other platform. But for long run, and if the amounts are big, that's when you should definitely consider, or we should definitely consider bank transactions. Having said all of this, please please understand when we are making the first transaction, that's when they will be asking a few documents. The documents we're supposed to have anyway, by the way. What kind of documents? We are supposed to have some kind of agreement. They want that. We are supposed to send you, for example, I am supposed to send you like an amount every month, like, hey, Jamie, can you please send this amount, right? I'm supposed to send you this. They just want the same document, like, hey, did you actually ask this to this person? That's all they want. So the documents that banks or governments want, they don't want anything extra. They don't want anything that we are not supposed to have. So so when we make the first transaction, it can be a little tricky. They might be asking for a lot of documents because we don't have any track record that there is a partnership between Nazmul and Jamie. We don't have any track record that Jamie is a real person and Nazmul is a real person and the transactions are legal. There is no track record. But once that is established, the bank know it, there is a track record, everybody knows it, there is a track record, the banks will not be asking for a lot more documents to prove the fact that you guys exist. Like we are real. There is no money laundering going on. So yeah, these are the things that I thought we should cover.
Well, and so two things I'll say before we kind of sign off. Number one, for the average listener who's hiring one or two or three people to support your sales and marketing efforts, you most likely don't need to do anything else other than use these available tools: Upwork, AnyHire, Payoneer, Veeam. You can use these tools because you're paying a support team. You're not doing the volumes of transactions that Nazmul and I are passing each other between Canada and the United States. Number two, if all of what you just heard in this podcast sounds like a giant headache, this is actually why we created a bunch of done for you services. We created a package called Manage, and essentially, it's we recruit talent for you, sales and marketing, offshore talent, but we will do all the payment processing, amongst other things, as part of managing the whole HR and operational backend. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to pay teammates and worry about taxes. We take that care of that all for you. Number two, we have other done for you services. We'll build an entire content marketing team or paid marketing team like an agency. Again, you just pay an invoice, we cover everything. We have two others. One is called Digital Prospector. We prospect on behalf of yourself as founders and CEOs on LinkedIn. Again, you just pay by credit card. Same with VA as a service. You just pay by credit card. We take care of the talent costs. So that's also an alternative, is that you rely on in-country partners to pay teammates so you don't have to worry about those challenges. But for those of you that want to recruit your own talent, we are here to support. We have a full learning library to teach you payment processing best practices and everything else that comes with offshoring. So with that, this is Offshore to Profits. Nazmul, have a great end to your evening. And please like, subscribe, comment on this. Pass this to your friends who are other founders and CEOs to benefit from cutting through the murky waters that is offshoring. We're here to debunk all those myths. Thanks.
Love it, Jamie. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.